You are Locked On Wolves Postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves crashed back down to earth. They scored just 85 points. They lose game 2 to the Lakers. Man, we got a lot to talk about tonight. Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves Postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow. He's live in LA right now, by the way, at JR Borman 13. What's the vibe right now? I mean, let's just get into it. What are you most frustrated about right now? I know there is a plethora. I mean, we'll go down the entire checklist by the time we're done tonight, but what's the number one thing that drove you nuts tonight?
Yeah, I think it's the fact that the Wolves held the Lakers to 95 points in game 1. They held them to 94 points tonight in game 2, and they're going back to Minnesota with a 1-1 series. You would think that if, given that defensive performance, that the Wolves would be able to muster up, at least 96 points in each of these games. And that's just not what happened. And I think, again, like, it's just so frustrating to me too, that, I killed the team on Twitter because in the first half of this or first quarter of this game, because nobody came out with any type of energy at all. There wasn't one single Timberwolves player that played with an ounce of positive energy in the first 8 minutes of the game. And in the first 8 minutes of the game, they gave up 25 points in the first. So 25 points in the first 8 minutes and 45 seconds of this game. And over the final 41 minutes tonight, they gave up 69 points. That's unbelievably great defense. And it was just the fact that nobody came out with any energy. They didn't pass the ball at all on offense. They didn't move without the ball on offense. They didn't drive the ball on offense. It was just a whole lot of just awful shots that had it was a ton of 1 or 2 pass possessions, maybe a 3 pass possession sprinkled in there that just led to horrible offense, and they couldn't dig out of that hole. I mean, they tried their darndest. I mean, again, over the final 43 minutes, they won this game by 1 point.
Yeah.
And that was despite their bench playing as bad as their bench possibly could have. Bench played as bad as they possibly could have, and they still outscored the Lakers bench 19-13.
I'm going to say it right now before we get into the weeds. I am hammering a DDV over points in game 3. There's no way this guy, he's so due. I mean, yes, we'll get into all the details, the entire bench, Naz Reid, terrible game, all this and that. But DDV, man, he is so due. He's got to explode in game 3 when they come back home. Lots to get into. I want to talk about the biggest turning point in this game. We'll get into a game 3 preview that's back in Minnesota, obviously. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so again, just broad overview, people who maybe missed most of this one. T-Wolves Lakers in LA, game 2, coming off that whooping in game 1. Wolves come out sluggish, sloppy again tonight. They get down early, but the first quarter, man, really set the tone for the entire game. They were down 19 after the first quarter, 34-15 after the first quarter. In fact, Luka outscored the Wolves by himself in that first quarter. And then from there on out, Jack, couldn't buy a 3, all the foul trouble on way too many important figures, way too many big names. And every time it felt like they were about to make a push, they just shot themselves in the foot time and time again. So Lakers take game 2. We're all tied up, 1 apiece. Big picture here, Jack. Again, Wolves handled them in game 1. They come crashing back down to earth tonight. So how you feeling knowing you get to go back home and you're all tied up, but you lost what feels like a lot of momentum just with the way everything went down, the way everything transpired, losing so many games within the game on so many levels tonight?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for me, it kind of started with just how unprepared they were in a sense that Chris Finch said before this game that the Timberwolves knew the Lakers were going to come out and give their best punch right away, play very physical, put the onus on the officials to decide what type of game this was going to be. And the fact that the Wolves knew that was going to happen, Finch said they were seemingly prepared for that. And then they just came out early without any type of real intensity or effort on the defensive end of the floor, and let the Lakers totally set the tone and couldn't play without fouling. And then they let that inability to play without fouling really control their emotions. And that was, I think, the biggest bummer right off the top.
Yeah.
And I think, then they totally settled in and played an awesome defensive game after that. And so I think, again, I totally understand that, Anthony Edwards has been really, really good in the second, third, and fourth quarters of a lot of these playoff games because he uses his first quarter as kind of a feel out. But it's just tough to kind of have that feel out when nobody else shows up to really help him out besides Julius Randle. And I think, again, it also is tough when you're, doing the feel out stuff when you're not really moving the basketball. Guys around you aren't moving without the basketball. They're not setting screens. You're not getting into action early in the clock, all of those things. So,
yeah, tough. Again, a lot I want to break down and get into, but just big picture, just they played a bad game. I mean, start to finish, top to bottom. T-Wolves didn't show up in any way, in any facet, and the Lakers came in hungry. Props to the Lakers for making some big adjustments, coming out more physical, adjusting to the refs or the whistle, whatever you want to call it.
And I want to say, and I want to say one thing too. Like, the officiating was not the reason why.
No.
Not the reason why they lost. I mean, the Wolves settled in. That the Wolves had 5 more free throw attempts than the Lakers. The Lakers had 2 more fouls than the Wolves did in this game. I just thought it was the Wolves' inability to kind of understand earlier on in the game that was the way that this game was going to go.
Well, let's talk about that.
They couldn't emotionally adjust to that.
Yeah, because I got to think, I mean, there is a long laundry list tomorrow morning when people wake up and think about everything that transpired in this game. There's a lot of, man, if this would have went the other way and vice versa. But I got to think near the top of that list for a lot of people, like their biggest beef with this game tomorrow morning is going to be the foul trouble, the lack of maturity or composure to control those emotions when the Lakers started coming out and playing more physical. That and also, like we talked about, the lack of effort and energy in that first quarter that really set the tone for the entire game, and they could just not dig themselves out of that hole. This was a double-digit game for like 2 hours plus. I mean, for like 34 straight minutes, they could not. I mean, it felt like Wolves fans were just hoping, can we just like make this a single point game? That in itself was going to feel like a win. That's how long it was a double-digit game. Yeah,
for sure. And it was like, I mean, I was sitting next to my guy, Ryan Eichten from Canasupis, who was out here in LA with me. And we both looked at how many times we looked at each other and we just said, like, how have the Wolves not been able to chip into this lead? Because the Lakers just kept clanking shot after shot after shot after shot, and the Wolves just couldn't throw it in the ocean. Even in that third, late in the second quarter, I thought the Wolves, had much better offensive process. I thought, Julius Randle deserves a ton of credit. We'll get into that too. The way that he kind of settled in and put the team on his back to start the second quarter and kind of took that physicality back to the Lakers and put them back on their heels a little bit. And Jaden McDaniels made some nice plays as well. Randle accounted for the first 10 points that the Wolves scored in that second quarter. And then later on in the second quarter, they started running some more flare actions where, guys setting a screen for Ant, and he's kind of flaring over the top of the arc to get the ball and then flow into, a pick and roll with Rudy Gobert, or dribble handoff with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And they started to find stuff. Ant had 3 really good looks in a row. And you're starting to think like, all right, let's just get this down to 14 or 12 or 13 or something like that. And they get it down to 14. And then the Wolves, which was a theme tonight, they gave up 9 offensive rebounds, which isn't terrible, but all 9 felt like they came at super important points. The Lakers get an offensive rebound. LeBron hits Rui Hachimura for an and one, and all of a sudden it's right back to 17. And then you're just kind of thinking, oh man, and it just felt like that the rest of the night, because just every time the Wolves kind of got it down to 11 or got it down to 9, they got it down to 9 one time. And then the Lakers would just come back with, a 6-7-0 run that was, spearheaded by some crazy shot that Luka Doncic threw up. And we'll get into Luka as well. But I thought, again, Luka Doncic did whatever he wanted in that first quarter and was, truly tremendous in that first quarter for the Lakers. Luka Doncic had what did he have in that first quarter? He had 16 points in the first
15 to 15.
quarter. And he had 15 in the final
Wolves
3
15.
quarters.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. Yeah. Let's get into the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Again, as I said, double-digit game for like what felt over 2 hours. When it was 15-8 until there was 1 or 2 possessions. That's all it lasted in the fourth quarter until the final few minutes, final few seconds. The Wolves were down 10 or more points. And again, to the theme here that we've talked about, every time they looked like they had a chance to go on a little run, get some momentum, something would happen. Lakers would turn it around, 7-0 run, 8-0 run, whatever it would be. Wolves would shoot themselves in the foot. What was the turning point, I guess, tonight, Jack? Do you go all the way back to the first quarter, or where does your mind go first?
No, I mean, I think the turning point kind of came in the middle part of that third quarter. Ant makes a 3 and then comes right back down and gets a little mid-range floater to go in sort of semi-transition, and then Luka just makes this crazy shot off the glass to take it from 11 to 13, and then the Lakers go on a very quick 7-0 run that only took a minute and 23 seconds, and that took it from 11 up to 18, and that was when it just felt like it was just a really, really uphill battle from the Wolves. And then I think what was frustrating for me at that point too was that the Wolves very clearly needed threes. And the biggest thing for the Wolves was that a lot of these guys just didn't want to shoot threes. They were passing up open threes because they had missed too many early on in the game. And I think that they let that affect their psyche. And that just can't necessarily happen in a playoff series when there are going to be these emotional swings from game to game. You have to stay persistent in your approach offensively. And it was just disappointing to see the Wolves pivot away from that. I mean, the Timberwolves 85 points tonight was a season low, but their 5 three-pointers made was also a season low. And the fact that the Timberwolves only got up 25 threes is completely unsustainable if they want to win this series. And I think, again, they shot 42 in game 1. They were 21 of 42. You can't take 17 fewer threes and expect to win the game.
Yeah.
So
well said. Yeah, no, yeah. Well said. Well said. We could probably spend another 15 minutes on that just alone, but let's go to our first ad break. Plenty more deep dive. Want to talk about the bench just disappearing, terrible three-point shooting, as you already touched on, but that's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a chance at a huge return, $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. Why I love FanDuel, when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. $250 in bonus bets guaranteed when you hit your first $5 bet. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in some NBA future action while you're there. T-Wolves were 35-1 to win the NBA Finals, to win the chip heading into Game 2. That probably will drop to 37-1, 38-1, I would guess, tomorrow morning. But it's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. I just want to shift real quick to the bench because so much was made about the bench in Game 1. Wolves bench outscored the Lakers like 43-11, right? And there was a little bit of garbage time into the end there, but just like everything else tonight, Jack, like that script was flipped, and the Wolves bench guys had virtually zero impact in any positive way tonight. DDV, Naz Reid, you name it. Who struggled the most, I guess, in that group, and which guy do you expect to bounce back the most if they're going to win Game 3 back in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Naz Reid. Hold on one second. Yeah, I think for me, it's got to be Naz Reid, just because I thought Naz did some kind of boneheaded things that were just kind of cost this Wolves team emotionally. And I think he can't let that happen. I understand that there's a line to be kind of straddled a little bit between, playing with some fire and having some, having some stuff to you that you can help fuel your fire and play with more passion. But at the same time, like, there's just been too many games this season where Naz Reid hasn't been as level-headed as he needs to be, and he's totally let it completely take him out of a game, where he's just like a complete zero in the game because he's constantly yelling at the refs. I mean, Jaden McDaniels had to shove Naz Reid to get him to go back up the floor defensively at one point in the second quarter, which was, or maybe it was even the first quarter, which was tough to watch. And then had that completely inexcusable play where he just ran with the ball up the court and then put it down underneath the basket on the opposite end that resulted on a second delay of game and a technical foul for a free point on the other end of the floor. That stuff can't happen in the playoffs. And then he's just talking crap to Austin Reeves for absolutely no reason when he's having an awful game. I mean, it just can't happen. And I think for Naz, look, we all love Naz. He's a tremendous player. He's, by all accounts, a beloved teammate and great dude. And I've loved all the interactions that I've had with him. But, I mean, at the same time, like, you just can't have the performance you had in game one and then let the flow of the game just completely, kind of corrupt the confidence that you'd built in that game. And so I think they definitely need him to be a lot better. The same thing goes for Dante DiVincenzo. I don't think, Dante, you didn't have necessarily the emotional capacity of it, which, I think makes me want to put Naz above Dante, especially when you saw the ceiling that Naz can play with. But, I mean, in game one, the players not named Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle had 79 points. They shot 30 of 53 from the floor, 56%, and they made 13 of their 26 three-point shots. And then in game two tonight, those same players had 33 points on 11 of 40 shooting, 27.5%, and they shot 1 of 13 from three. That's and unreal. Still, Naz and Dante probably each had their worst game of the season tonight, and they still outscored the Lakers bench 19-16. I want to address one comment really quick from Amanda that did Ant's shoulder get hurt? I presume that's what that means. Yeah, he got rocked on a screen in the first quarter and had kind of been holding his shoulder ever since then. So I'd imagine that probably just had a little bit of a stinger and will probably be fine moving forward. Obviously was not, down in the press conference because I'm still up here in my media seat and we went live pretty quickly after the buzzer here. So not sure any of the details beyond that, but I mean, he certainly looked good enough to go from the rest of the game, but I don't think that they can use that as an excuse by any means, considering
of course,
it's far from the problem tonight.
What if his shower did get hurt though? What if Jaden punched the head of the shower? He couldn't get that post-game shower in those. That can affect him coming back home Jack, to Minnesota in game 3. One real quick thing about the bench. I do want to give some props to my guy Terrence Shannon Jr. 7 minutes, +7 though in 7 minutes, only 2 points, but boy, they needed a little spark, man. Mike Conley wasn't doing it. Nah wasn't doing it. They just weren't getting it done at that point guard position. And Terrence Shannon, once again, haven't seen him in a minute. Can't remember, was it a quad or an ankle? He got dinged up the last two groin. Thank you. Those last 2-3 weeks, and they kind of shelved him. But all of a sudden, man, when you need a little spark, a little bit of energy, they go to Terrence Shannon Jr. He was great. Talk to me about him in that small sample, and then also Julius Randle. Again, just getting it done. I wish we had a couple more of those Julius Randles we could put on the court sometimes.
Yeah, no question about it. I think you got to give TJ a lot of props, considering that it's very rare that two players in the Wolves bench rotation are bound to the bench with foul trouble in the first half. And I think that, Finchie made the right call in terms of trying to inject some pace and some life and some offense into how the Wolves are playing, especially considering that TJ had his career high against the Lakers in this building earlier this season. So I think, there were some spacing issues when he got out there initially that I think were somewhat understandable just because he probably hasn't practiced much with this group. And, I think, again, the guys have been playing together a lot more the last probably a few days and week or so in practice. It's probably just a little bit tougher in those moments. But again, I thought he did a pretty good job. I liked the way that he attacked off the catch and got into the paint and kicked the ball out and got the defense in rotation a couple times. His one rebound that he had was super competitive. He had that score on the other end and they had a really nice contested rebound on the other end of the floor. And again, he just didn't do anything that I think really compromised the Wolves. He got caught in the air once on that Luka play, but again, it's a rookie. You've got to give the guy a little bit of grace considering the moment. The Wolves were +7 in his 7 minutes. So again, he was not a liability out there by any means. And that's the bar for a rookie in that type of spot. And so I think if anything, he proved to Chris Finch that if he needs to press that button again at some point later down the line in the series, that he's ready to go and built for that situation. But yeah, shifting gears to Randle, I think Julius deserves a ton of credit for the way that he kind of studied the ship. My favorite thing about Julius Randle is that he very rarely complains. In the 2 times that you saw him, being very adamant about a foul call, he successfully lobbied the Timberwolves coaches to challenge it. And both of those calls were overturned. They were successful challenges. And there were 2 plays that, by the way, this was really my only complaint with the officiating tonight. The Wolves shouldn't have had to challenge either of those plays. Those were pretty easy.
There was another out of bounds call that was clearly tipped by the Lakers, and it took the second ref to come in and say,
on Finney Smith on the back cut from Randle to Ant.
But they got it right. They got it right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, with Randle, I just think how even keeled he is emotionally is super important in these types of playoff games when you've got a lot of other, guys that can run hot and cold a little bit. And so I think the way that he just kind of kept his head down and kept plugging away and played with a very necessary level of physicality and aggression in the middle of the floor was really important. And again, Julius Randle had 6 assists tonight. No one else on the Wolves had more than 3. And Ant had 0 after having 9 in game 1. So the way that the Wolves were able to play through him has been super important. And again, 27 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. You'd like Julius to have more than 4 rebounds, especially considering, the way that the Lakers are crashing the offensive glass in some of these situations. But I'd honestly put more of that on Rudy. Only had 6 rebounds. So you really need more from Rudy in those situations. But yeah, for Julius, I thought that he moved the ball really well, and I liked the way that he went right at LeBron James and was more than willing to kind of wear and kind of drain the interior of the Lakers defense, because he knows that there's not really any big guys down there that are going to help and block his shot. So I like the way that he was just pretty relentless and stepping up and saying, hey, you guys can play through me. Ant might be struggling a little bit at the start of the game, and I'm capable of carrying the load, putting the team on my shoulder for stretches, and that was super important. And again, I liked what he did in the minutes with, when Nas is at the 5, Jaden's at the 3, and he's kind of at that 4 spot as kind of an offensive hub. I thought he was tremendous. So he would definitely be my player of the game tonight. And then one other thing before we get out of here that I think is super important to talk about is Rudy Gobert. I thought that, I obviously was not watching the podcast because I'm here in the arena in Los Angeles, but this crowd, I'm not sure if it came through on the broadcast or not, Luke, but this crowd got on its feet and started yelling every single time Luka Doncic forced a switch onto Rudy Gobert. And it was like Luka Doncic was just trying to clip farm and make all these highlight plays on Rudy Gobert. And Rudy Gobert defended his tail off in this game. This game, anybody who says that Julius Randle is a liability, that Rudy Gobert is a liability, and you can't play Rudy in situations like this because of one shot that Luka Doncic made over him in the Western Conference Finals last year, is not watching the game. Rudy Gobert was unbelievable on the defensive end of the floor tonight. They had a 104 offensive rating while he was out there, which is incredible. And Luka Doncic, really both these guys shooting against Rudy Gobert tonight. Luka Doncic had 2 points when Rudy Gobert was his direct matchup. He made one of his 4 shots when he was being defended by Rudy Gobert for 2 points. And LeBron took 4 shots when he was defended by Rudy Gobert, didn't score. And Austin Reeves made 2 of his 4 shots for 4 points. Rudy Gobert did an unbelievable job covering and getting out on the perimeter and switching, and proved exactly why he is worth the contract that he has. And I could not be happier that Rudy is continuing to play super, super good defense when, all these spotlights are on him. And he knew that all the spotlights were going to be on him. And in these 2 games in LA, you can nitpick and say he needs to be better on the glass. That's fair. The Wolves need to find a way to get him more involved on the offensive end of the floor, or he just needs to be more active on the offensive glass. That's fair. But what you need most from him is to play excellent defense and not get discouraged or frustrated when the whistle doesn't go his way or when guys make tough shots. And that's exactly what he did tonight. I think the compliment of Julius Randle just keeping his head down and keep plugging away and playing even keeled, rather emotionless in a very complimentary way game on the offensive end of the floor, paired with Rudy Gobert and Nickeil Alexander-Walker for a good stretch of this game, playing really, really strong defense on the other end of the floor. It is just such a, wonderful foundational kind of set of 2 pillars for the Wolves.
It makes me think back to game 1 when they're up 20, right? They're up 20 and Luka hit a 3, right? Hits a bomb on Rudy Gobert, and Finch turned to Rudy and like, dude, you got to press up on him, man. And just the adjustment from, not that he was bad at all. I don't know what kind of head-to-head stats you have from game 1 when Rudy was on Luka and LeBron, if you got that in front of your top of your head. But nonetheless, doesn't matter. Just the adjustment from even game 1 to game 2 and how impactful he was versus that 2-headed monster was really nice to see. And I'm glad you have those stats as well. Because
in game 1, Luka scored 0 points on 0 of 4 shooting, and LeBron James scored 3 points on 1 of 3 shooting. He made a 3 on LeBron on Rudy.
God, unbelievable. There you go. Yeah, unbelievable. A couple minutes left. Got to talk about what game 3 is going to look like. That's all coming up right after this. All right, so 2-game sample now here, Jack. What's the number 1 adjustment this team has got to make in game 3? Because we know this team's got the goods. They got the goods to go win this series, no doubt. But you can't come out flat again for the 3rd game in a row like they did tonight, especially in game 2 tonight versus Luka and company, and expect to win, even if it is at home. We know this team doesn't necessarily play their best always at home for whatever reason. So number 1 adjustment they got to make in game 3.
Yeah, I think the number 1 adjustment that the Wolves have to make is they have to find more ways to get out and run in transition. In the first game, the Timberwolves won the transition battle, I believe 25-6. And so they did a wonderful job of getting out and running. Chris Finch said before the game today, they could have even been better in transition. They shot 10 of 15 in transition the other night. And they did a wonderful job seeking out threes. They were 5 of 7 in transition on 3-point shots the other night. And the Wolves only had 6 points in transition tonight. And we're down 9-0 in transition at the end of the first quarter. They did a much better job kind of tightening up the screws defensively, allowed only 4 transition points the rest of the game. So they lost 13-6 in that department tonight. But again, for how many stops the Wolves had tonight, the way that they were unable to just fly up the court and create any type of open shot, whether it was, open corner threes, open slot threes, effectively passing the ball to create easy looks at the basket. I think you got to credit the Lakers in the way that they closed out. I thought that they did a really good job of closing out without allowing the Wolves to just blow by them for easy buckets. But again, I think if you're going to get that many stops, you've really got to be able to turn those into points going the other way, because the Lakers certainly did that. And the biggest area that I think the Wolves need to clean up offensively, outside of generating more 3-point looks that we talked about earlier in this game, is the Wolves got to make their layups, and they've got to make shots in the restricted area. In game 1, looking at some of the numbers from game 1 here, let me find them in my notes. In the half court, the Wolves shot 2 of 10 in the restricted area in the half court, which is just pitiful. And they kind of got bailed out because they shot 11 of 15 in that short mid-range area, that 4 to 14 feet area. And so when you're missing a lot of layups, that's just easy transition opportunities the other way. I mean, outside of a live ball turnover, the number 1 I guess like if you're looking at the offensive rating of, offensive possessions that start with a rebound off of a missed layup or a missed paint shot, that's the most efficient type of possession going back the other way outside of a live ball turnover. So they've got to be better there. And then tonight, the Wolves were just 13 of 26 on layups tonight, 50%. That's well below the league average of making about 2/3 of your shots there. So that's certainly got to be a lot better as well. But again, I think the Wolves defense on Luka Doncic in both of these games has been admirable. Luka shot 11 free throws, and he's going to get his in a lot of these games. But for the Wolves to lock down the way they did on Luka the final three quarters, and guess what? Luka's going to continue to try to isolate on Rudy Gobert because it is personal with him. It is personal with Luka and Rudy and all these other guys in the Lakers and Rudy because they want to make a fool out of Rudy Gobert. And Rudy is so prideful and is so good on the defensive end of the floor that he's going to continue to accept those matchups because the Timberwolves have absolutely won those isolations against Rudy Gobert in the aggregate. No question about it. And so I think you've just got to stay in it defensively and keep competing and hope that, you'll be able to make enough shots and your role players will play a little bit better at home to a point where, it wasn't as bad as it was tonight.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, last one here, Jack, then we'll get out of here. What's the water cooler talk tomorrow after this one, given their performance today? And again, what lies ahead in Game 3? We got a 2-game sample now. What should everybody be texting in the T-Wolves group chat tonight?
Yeah, I think it's just pretty incredible that the Timberwolves shot 8 of 38, 21% on jump shots in this game between their 2-point jump shots and their 3-point jump shots. And so you've just got to find a way to make more shots. And the Timberwolves did a much better job, especially in the second and third quarters, of playing with a little bit more pace offensively, being more decisive, getting into the lane and kicking it out and trying to generate some more good looks. But they did it in Game 1. And I said it in the preview pod that I did with our guy Ben Beacon on the Locked On Wolves show. I've said it on Twitter. I've said it, earlier in Game 1 that, I had picked the Lakers in 7 because I didn't trust that the Timberwolves would be able to play offense the way that they showed they could in Game 1 consistently over a 7-game series. So I want to see the Wolves have a renewed commitment to sharing the ball, not holding the ball for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds, making, playing smart off the catch, not driving into crowds, definitely trying to just make as many cross-court kick out 3-point passes as you possibly can to create open shots for your teammates, and then make the extra pass and then make the extra pass to try to get guys open shots. I thought they turned down too many good 3-point looks tonight because they didn't trust themselves, and I think they've got to do a better job of trusting themselves to take shots. So I think probably just the demoralized. I think what people will be talking about tomorrow is just the demoralizing nature of how many guys played this poorly tonight and how many guys shot the ball this poorly tonight. I mean, like I said, Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, 4 of 12 from 3. Everyone else was 1 of 13. So the fact that the other guys that played only took 13 threes is awful. So that number's got to come way up. But look, this is a prideful Wolves group. You got to give them a lot of credit for the way that they defended and not letting this game get completely off the rails, because that first quarter, look, they deserved to get blown out by 40 with the way that they played. They turned around, they locked in, and they won the last 40 minutes of this game, playing really hard-nosed basketball. So you hope that that'll carry forward, and that that defense will really thrive on the back of a crowd that will be very raucous, very drunk for an 8:30 p.m. Central Time tip-off on Friday night, and it should be a lot of fun. Fans, get down early, because I think the Twins play a night game on Friday night.
They do.
So get the North Loop bumping and get down there early, because it should be a ton of fun on Friday night.
It's going to be electric. And bottom line here too, Jack, as disgusting as tonight was, as almost unwatchable at times, especially that first quarter was. Bottom line, Jack, it's tied up 1-1. We're coming back home for the next 2 games, 3 and 4. Let's get out of here. T-Wolves crash back down to earth in Game 2 in LA, 94-85. That's your final. As always, though, huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game as well. Sometimes we celebrate, sometimes we're in here venting, but like and subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow Jack, please, on X at Jared Borman 13, live from the Target Center this Friday for Game 3 and Sunday for Game 4. Again, Game 3 Friday, we got an 8:30 p.m. tip. Catch you right here, same time, same place. But until then, signing out.